And
And
I am
before
now
you do
connected.
that, Howard,
Yes,
before you do that, could everybody who isn't speaking please mute?
excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, so without further ado, Budley, teach us some great stuff.
Certainly going to try, and thank you all for joining me. For those of you who don't know, my name is Bud Freund. I provide IT support and education out of Stamford, Connecticut. I teach technology life skills at one school and provide tech support at another. I work with individuals and small businesses. I am also a SCORE volunteer where I run the webinar and now the SCORE TV programs. I am essentially the gnome in the basement. Most people do not see me. Today I'm going to be talking about free software and the important watchword, as you can see with free software, is that when something's free, you're the product, and we will talk about how that's affected in Facebook and Google a little further on. Just a few watchwords to have in mind so that you understand that you're not alone in all of what's going on here. Everybody is faced with the same issues. And as you can see, that statement was several years old, certainly applicable today. Another item I wanted to make mention of is copyright and fair use. For those of you who've got websites and believe that the internet is a treasure trove of free eats, fair use is a concept that allows you to either link to or reference to somebody else or somebody else's website, providing them with the credit. And as long as you don't disparage them, as long as you don't disparage them, they will probably let you do it without issue. Copyright, however, is when you say, gee, I really like that photograph and I'm going to use it on my website, and you do not pay the creator of the image any compensation. That is a copyright violation and you can be sued for that. So proceed cautiously with all of that available information that you can get and use online. Many of you have probably heard of Einstein's theory of relativity. I am a very big believer in his theory of simplicity. I am not following the chat window, so Howard's going to feed me things at the end. What I find is that in many cases, the question you may have on slide 8 is going to be answered possibly on slide 14. So I am happy to answer questions at the end. I want to start by framing up a picture for you. Some of you may remember this from the summer. If you're in the car with somebody and you see that light go on and you do nothing, my question is whether you are going to steer the car and make your passenger push, or whether you're going to let your passenger steer the car and you're going to push. Because I can tell you without question that if you do nothing, you are going to have a problem. Similarly, when you see those little red circles with the little red lights go up on either your computer, your tablet, or your mobile device, it is time to do something, because there are close to 80,000 doors into and out of a computer. And the programmers, and there are people here who will correct me when I'm wrong, they can't plug up all the holes, because if they did, you'd get no work done. So when you see those little symbols, it's time to plug up the software. It will safeguard the machines you're on. Let me give you a slightly different analogy. Once upon a time, cars didn't have bumpers. Then they got seat belts, and then they got airbags. In each of those situations, it was because people were trying to make the driving experience safer. Similarly, when it comes to the hardware that you use, I urge you to find a sweet spot somewhere between doing absolutely nothing and total paranoia. And it will be different for everybody. But we're no longer in a period where you can observe the speed limit signs and not pay any attention to them, because there are problems in ignoring these patches and software updates. Updating is one of the most important things that you can do. Now, I also want you to think about all of these devices that we use as the everything thing. And it really is. It's communication, written, visual, verbal. It's billing, banking, investing, recreation, research, education without question, and of course, inexplicably, binge watching cats on YouTube. Now, with that said, the proper care and feeding of your mobile and stationary devices is very important. So I want to talk about two items that you can put into your computer. The top one is called a bit.ly. And I don't know anybody who can tell me where that link is going to take them on their computer. With that said, directly underneath it is a website that you can put a bit.ly into to figure out where it's going to take you. Secondly, that box with the black dots in it is called a QR code. And again, depending upon who presents it to you, I urge you to proceed with caution. When Home Depot gives you QR codes, it's a pretty safe bet they've bulletproofed them. If you are walking down the street and you see a QR code on a lamppost or on a telephone pole, I'm not so sure you want to scan it and click on it. So again, proceed cautiously with these things. Segueing, of course, into the next part of our show. And again, as we know, we are currently in a situation we have just discovered where even when you spend ridiculous amounts of money on the protection of your hardware and software, to quote Reverend Johnson from Blazing Saddles, you are on your own. So bear that in mind and proceed cautiously. I will repeat that numerous times. Another thing I want to talk about is this notion of information that we gather. And for those of you who are mathematically inclined, please correct me if my math is wrong down there. But there are 38 cable news channels providing just shy of 20 million minutes of information yearly. 50% of that is going to set the left side of your head on fire, and 50% of it is going to set the right side of your head on fire. Here's the point. And by the way, before I forget, the estimate is that there are 1.5 billion websites, and I will tell you that the 5.6 billion web pages is ridiculously small because websites like Amazon, Facebook, and Google are database driven, which means that they can mix and match their web pages ad infinitum. There are an infinite number of websites. This is a massive amount of information. Here's the point of all of this. You will go in to talk with somebody who may lean to the left. You may talk to somebody who leans to the right. You may find that in that conversation, it is probably not a particularly good idea to be on the wrong side of whatever political or social opinion that person may have. So information is very important to have. Information is important to use. I urge you to use it with caution. So let's talk about a few pieces of software along the way that will be able to help you in keeping your computer, and these are predominantly PC-based items. I'll let you know otherwise. Super Anti-Spyware is a ridiculous sounding name. It is a free piece of software that will basically scrub out spyware that's gone onto your computer. It works great. Malwarebytes is a Mac and PC item. And again, it's for scrubbing garbage on your machine. I will tell you that there is no single solution, and I would be suspect to anyone who tells you otherwise. In the antivirus world, Bitdefender is absolutely fabulous, and it is free for personal use. I'll say that again. Bitdefender is free for personal use. The Macintosh version is only a paid subscription to the best of my knowledge. However, Bitdefender 2 or 3 years ago was written up at the Consumer Electronics Show by the New York Times twice in 1 week, which it's unprecedented. The reason it's so good is that very little of the antivirus work is done on your computer. It's all done on the Bitdefender server in the sky. So it's really good. Takes up very few resources on your machine. AVG is on both sides, the Mac and PC. It is free on both sides. Every now and then Bitdefender gets a little cranky to load, so I've opted for AVG in other cases. Avast, a PC side item. I have not seen that on the Mac side. If you are looking for a paid subscription, I have found Viper to be particularly good, especially if you're dealing in multiple computers. Their dashboard online does a really good job of updating and making sure that everything is current. And as I said in an earlier slide, updating is without question one of the most important things you can do to your computer, Mac or PC. And of course, let's talk about passwords, because if you lock your car, if you lock your house, I urge you to safeguard your data. And with that in mind, I want to talk about a process more than the specifics of passwords. And what you're seeing is called the LEET language, short for elite. It is the transposing of numbers and characters for letters. So you can use the word password as a password, but you may want to do it with a little bit of finesse. I don't think you need to get as carried away as anti-disestablishmentarianism. For me, that cap-H has always gotten me crazy. And if you're looking for the truly bulletproof password, at the very bottom there is a person, a place, and a thing. Put them together, that's a pretty good password. But what's really important to understand about passwords also is that you can use basic, simple things. More importantly, don't leave them out. I am a big believer in the spreadsheet or Word document that's called birthdays and anniversaries, shopping list, guest list, anything but this is the file where I keep the secret passwords. That's a really bad name for your place to put the passwords, okay? Don't leave them out. I rarely read my slides, but this is one of my favorites. Many of you know that General Sun Tzu, 500 years before Christ was born, wrote a book called The Art of War, in which he wrote, keep your friends close, your enemies closer, your mobile devices even closer than that, and your passwords as close as humanly possible while avoiding physical discomfort. Now, he may not have written the second half of that, but I think you get the general idea. And again, understand that we in this current environment are targets. People are looking for us. People are trying to fool us. People are trying to get our information. People are trying to ransom us. In the vocabulary of technology, low-hanging fruit are the people who don't have a firewall, don't use two-step authentication, click before reading where something is going to go. Be cautious, people. Please be cautious. And in today's era, with enough information online, you can what's called spearfish, target the CFO of a company, target the CEO of a company. Many companies on their website will proudly tell you who they work with. You can create some cockamamie email that says, if you don't send whatever, you're going to lose the account, and people in a panic will get fooled and do it. Proceed with caution, please. Also, that article, the bit.ly at top there, is by a fellow named Jeffrey Fowler. Put simply, he writes it, I read it. It's that good. And in that article, he will talk about how Facebook is following you and how you can turn off the following that Facebook does. Also, if you are using Google, if you are using Chrome, you are being tracked. And if you go to myactivity.google.com, you can turn all of that off. And that very sad computer down there, because they're not going to watch you, don't worry about it. They've got a billion other people that they can track, and they actually have a couple of antitrust lawsuits going on right now to keep them busy. They don't need to follow you. And you can turn off all of the apps that they track. You can turn off the advertising that you click on. You can turn off the YouTubes that you watch. All of this can be turned off. Third place to go to is aboutads.info. You go to the consumer tab, go to the customer choice page, and you will be able to turn off the pop-up advertising from over 130 legitimate online advertisers. It doesn't make it all go away, but much of the advertising which is being purchased by online ad agencies, in my web browsers, I have a lot of empty spaces because I have blocked the ads. You can do the same. If you're in email, I urge you to consider something other than free email because it offers no protection. Have I mentioned this concept of if you click on something, you could have a problem? Please remember it, folks. The numbers are just frighteningly large right now because we're all online and online in an unbalanced environment. When 91% of hacks are coming out of email, understand that the email that you send to somebody is going to possibly go farther down the line, and you don't know who that sixth person down could be. For example, Microsoft will always brand any email you send to them, and in a politically correct phrase, if I clicked on that button, I would be screwed. Similarly, I know for a fact that FedEx does not need to use support@dentistelmhurstny.com for their email because they have fedex.com. Again, this is really bad thing to click. So the watchword is, in those group emails, take care for the other people that you're communicating with, and BCC, blind carbon copy, so that you're not sharing everybody's email with everybody else. It's just a precaution to do for other people. And this right now is my most favorite piece of spam. The director of the FBI sent to me personally from his Polish email service an email telling me that there is $1.5 million waiting for me if I send a Gmail to the only Western Union post office in California. Throw this stuff in the trash, folks, please. Now, there is a lot of subscription subscription apps available these days, and many of them are worth consideration. And here's why. And particularly Microsoft Office 365 At $100 per year, they will give you 5 licenses for 5 devices. And part of what you're buying isn't just the software, but the upkeep of the software. It's almost like leasing a car, where for the period of time that you lease, the dealership is going to do the oil changes and the maintenance on that car at no additional cost. When you buy and own software, the updating and plugging of the holes is on you. Now, Office 365, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneDrive, which is in the paid service, a terabyte of storage online, and also a program called OneNote. I am a bigger fan of Evernote. I started there, and it's my preference. They're basically interchangeable until you get to the point where you've just got too many of them, and it's very hard to move from one piece of software to another. Evernote, basically, my phone, my tablet, my computer all touch that single point in the sky. I can start a letter on my phone. I can continue it on my laptop. I can finish it on my desktop. I can email it out. I pay $60 a year for Evernote because there are several features in the paid version that you do not get in the free version. One of them being all of the clipping that I do gets pulled out of Evernote. The articles I collect are through an Evernote add-on to my browsers for free. Evernote will give you 60 megabytes a month, very similar to your phone service where they reset the clock every month on your minutes. Evernote does the same on your data. For those of you who aren't familiar with just how much 60 megabytes is equivalent to, the Bible is approximately 1.7 megabytes. Evernote will give you 60 megabytes. If you can write 60 megabytes of anything, you are prolific. So, a lot of data that resets depending upon what you do. Adobe's Creative Cloud, for those of us who are in imaging and presentation businesses, Photoshop, Lightroom, Illustrator, InDesign, Dreamweaver, Premiere. These can be part of a Creative Cloud package. They will slice and dice, mix and match. It is fabulously well updated software. I was having a problem with my Acrobat paid version, and I had a fellow from Adobe remoting into my computer for an hour to clean up whatever the problem was. And again, that was part of what I pay for in the leasing of my software. Now, G Suite is the paid version of Google. Google for free will give you the equivalents of Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, so you can do presentations, documents, and spreadsheets. And if my memory is correct, the free version will also give you 15 gigabytes of storage. But in the paid version, the help is going to be better than if you can't find it on the Google website, you can't have an answer. So G Suite, you can get a person dedicated to helping solve a problem. And I use G Suite through the SCORE volunteer work I do. Given a preference personally, I started in Office, and there comes a point in time as to just how much new and different I want to commit myself to learning. After a while, getting work done takes priority over learning new ways to do the work. Email. I pay for Microsoft hosted Exchange. It is the 900-pound gorilla of email. Somebody is watching out for my spam. Someone is watching out for my whitelists and my blacklists. If I have a problem with email on a device, I can delete my email account on my laptop. I can reconnect to my server in the sky, and everything that's been going on, irrespective of the device I did it on, will come back down to restore on whatever I'm touching, because the unwritten law of email clearly states if you absolutely, positively must get your hands on an email, it will not be on the device that you're touching unless you are in a Microsoft hosted exchange type of service. Now, Outlook, Yahoo, Gmail, these are free services that you can take advantage of. My crystal ball is predicting, with all of the garbage that goes in and out, you are going to get to a point where you will see businesses that are more and more being concerned about the risk of cyber attack and compromise, telling you that they will be very happy to send an email out to your free email service. But, and I said this is my crystal ball, it is not happening yet, but I do believe you will see a point where they're not going to be taking inbound until it's from a legitimate, paid, protected email service. The risks are becoming greater and greater. So we can continue on to other choices in the world. And the two great places to go looking for them are Portable Apps and LiberKey. These two websites have been around forever. They are a treasure trove of stuff in multiple categories. On the portable app side of life, not only can you install the app onto your computer, but they will allow you to install the app onto a thumb drive so that you could travel to wherever you have to go with the app available to you at whatever computer you sit at, provided that computer, when you double click, allows you to run the app. They're great resources, and as you can see from those pictures, there's a lot of choices, and I won't even begin to go through the comprehensive list. Two really great places, safe places to get free software. A few of my favorites, though, PicPic is a screenshot app that I use very regularly, because it will allow me to take a selected area or a full screen or just a window and copy it wherever I want to go. Toucan is basically it's a pipe. That's the easiest way to think of it. Microsoft will give you 82 characters to a file name. However, in the copying of some files from, say, your computer to a thumb drive, in the world of the internet, you may have more than 82 characters, or in other cases, the Microsoft copy will hiccup. Toucan is a pipe, and it just takes it from the left side, shoves it through the pipe, and puts it on the right side. And for big copies, it's a very stable method of moving data. VLC will play any video, and again, free download. You've got MP4s, you've got AVIs, whatever it is, it's going to play it. LiberKey, I've already mentioned. I will give you greater detail on browsers in just a moment, but at this point, the current offering for Microsoft in the world of browsers is no longer Internet Explorer, it's Edge. It's an excellent piece of software. They've replaced it and done a very good job. Firefox has a number of add-ons I'll be touching on briefly in a moment. Brave is basically a privacy browser. They are very clear in stating that they do not share your information, and you can pick DuckDuckGo, the anonymous search engine, as your choice of search inside of Brave, and it helps to maintain your privacy online. Chrome has become the 900-pound gorilla. Virtually everything runs in Chrome, but as I said earlier, Chrome is tracking everything you do, so proceed with caution. Windows Power Toys is a very nice little add-on from Microsoft that will allow you to key command the starting of apps. So you hold down your Windows key and press number 3 and you can start an app. Windows key number 4 starts a different app. Windows key number 5 and so on. And it's a great add-on because the keyboard is faster than the mouse. LibreOffice and OpenOffice are free alternatives to Microsoft Office. The only thing that's important to understand is that without tweaking, they are going to save in their native file formats. So if you save in the native, I think it's ODX format for LibreOffice, you send that document to somebody in Word, they will not be able to open it. They will get annoyed with you. So there is a little bit of tweaking to be sure that either Libre or OpenOffice, which both work on Mac and PC, will cooperate with everybody else in the world. Keynote pages and numbers come on any Macintosh computer that you purchase. And while you pay a premium price for a Macintosh as hardware, understand that Apple is a hardware company. They sell hardware. They make software that makes their hardware run really well, which is why I say that Keynote pages and numbers are free, because you don't get them without buying the hardware. And then, as I mentioned earlier, in Google land, you can have sheets, docs, and slides, also the equivalent of the Office suite. And then there's paint.net, which is basically Photoshop on Weight Watchers. It will do the basics that you need for any imaging. You can do very basic retouching. You can do image resizing. And it can save in multiple file formats. I show that icon, that logo, because when you go searching for it, if you don't see just that, you may not be getting exactly what you want. I mentioned super anti-spyware before. This to me was the world's record. I will tell you that it was on a computer that should have been HIPAA compliant. I urge you to take care on the machines that you're running. This is not the way the machines are supposed to be. This is my mobile list. And again, we'll just work our way from top to bottom. Jumbo was written up in the New York Times about a year ago. If you put in your username and password for Facebook, Twitter, and I believe LinkedIn, Jumbo will run through your privacy settings and lock them down. I don't use social media very much. I refer to it as unsocial media. And anybody who's ever studied the English language knows that the root of Twitter is twit. So I don't do much in the way of social media, but for those of you who are in it, Jumbo will help to keep you safe. Dropbox, as you know, is a point in the sky, and unless it is a paid service, it is not a backup. And I'll take a moment to talk about the difference between access and backup. Access, whether you're on your computer, tablet, or smartphone, you can get to a file. If you have a corruption, everything will get corrupted in online access. Whereas if you have a backup, it is a copy in your back pocket and it will not be corrupted. So Dropbox, in my opinion, online access, not backup. I've mentioned Evernote. It's absolutely wonderful. Clearly, you know about Zoom, and if you don't, you wouldn't be here. I use Google News and Weather as a news aggregator. I find it looks better on Android devices than on Apple mobile devices. And conversely, that item at the bottom, Smart News, looks better on Apple devices than it does on Android devices. So I touch a lot of machines, and I probably hit about 10 different news sources on almost a daily basis so that I can talk to you and the professor doesn't get stumped. WhatsApp is a Facebook product for video chatting, so you're probably being tracked in what's going on there. If you're not using Amazon, I wear a mask when you go shopping, please. Docs2Go is a alternative to Office on mobile devices. Microsoft Office, whether on the Android side or the Apple side, takes up about 1 gigabyte of space on your device per app. Word, 1 gigabyte. Excel, 1 gigabyte. PowerPoint, 1 gigabyte. 3 gigabytes to use those apps on your devices. They're really good. They work really well. Docs2Go, very lean, been around a very long time, actually located out of New Haven if they're still up there, and it will allow you to create Word, Excel, and PowerPoint documents that you can then move around wherever you want. Venmo, a terrific way of getting bills paid from a mobile device. It does not use two-step authentication. If you are banking and you are banking through your mobile devices, please turn on two-step authentication to safeguard your information and data. QuickBooks Online, really good in my opinion. Some people hate it. I happen to love it. I get done with a job, I get in my car, I open QuickBooks Online, and I send a bill. It doesn't get much better than that. You've talked about Slack, so I'll stay out of that one. Being a music fan, I hear things, I turn on Shazam, I find out the artist and the name of a song. It's a great way to go, oh, I like that song. Who wrote it? And then you can pick it up from whatever music service you're using. The New York Times app works very well. Their digital subscription, proceed cautiously in a Times subscription service. It is enormously confusing. I recently changed from a paper delivery to an all digital delivery, and there are numerous offerings. There is digital unlimited and digital basic. Check the pricings, check the offerings. They change constantly. The Wall Street Journal online has gotten better on the Android side. It used to be a data hog. It takes up less space now. They've done a good job of fixing up the app. And obviously, if you're not using Waze, I urge you to get that on a phone. It is a terrific way of navigating, and it has saved me from numerous traffic jams. So, staying connected to the whole wide world. We've talked about Dropbox. We've talked about Evernote. We've talked about the alternative to Evernote, OneNote, OneDrive. As a free service, Microsoft will give you 5 gigabytes of storage. As a paid $100 a year and 5 licenses, OneDrive will give you a terabyte of storage. ShareSync is through a company called Intermedia. If you are involved in either financial or medical information, they are a secure storage backup service. Box, again, is secure storage and backup. Google Drive, again, an alternative to OneDrive and Dropbox. Chrome Remote is a fabulous little free app that you can put onto either a tablet, a laptop, your phone. If you put it on the computer back at your house, you can remote into your machine. If you need whatever, or you need to run a piece of software, I have been on a client site where I had to fix something in Photoshop. Chrome Remote, back to Photoshop on the PC, did my fix, emailed it to myself, all done. Chrome, we've talked about, it's tracking. I mentioned add-ons in Firefox. FlagFox is one of my favorites. It will give you the country of origin of the server you are talking to. What's important about that is if you go to something like citibank.com and you see the flag of Lithuania, I urge you to not put in your username and password. It will be a really bad idea. Also, if you're interested, the next time you go to Facebook through your computer, you will find out that you are touching a server in Ireland. And if you go online and look for an image of the Facebook facility in Ireland, it is extraordinary. And when you look at that, make note of how small the parking lot is compared to the size of the building. Colorful tabs, for those of us who are visual, it will give you multicolored tabs so you can remember that you were in the green tab as opposed to whatever the name of that website was. And it's just a handy item that works colorfully, those of us who are visual. Forecast Fox will give you weather locally as well as somewhere else. So if you work with people in San Francisco, it's a nice intro to say, oh, I see you've got sunny weather, it's raining here. Just another piece of useful information. Simple search, I'm forgetting too much information. I'm forgetting the name of the people who came up with this neat little add-on for Firefox. But what it will do is return the original Google search where you did a Google search and you would get 10 or 12 blue text links at the very top. You got through the it cuts through the advertising and just gives you information without the Google advertising. Nice little add-on. Brave, as I mentioned, is the anonymous browser. DuckDuckGo is the anonymous search engine. And I find it good to about 85% of what I need to find online. Every now and then, you just got to go to Google because everything is there. And then, as I mentioned, Edge is the current Microsoft offering. They have done a very good job. They are also tracking what you do. So again, proceed cautiously. And one other thing, in case you didn't know, LinkedIn is owned by Microsoft. So they're watching what's going on and trying to figure out how to monetize it. One other thing to note on Microsoft is that in the $1 billion of expense that the federal government spent to try and block any kind of hacking, Microsoft was very quick to say, just for a note, folks, none of what got hacked was ours. So I want to talk about a concept in backup called the 3211 backup. Put your data in 3 different places, 2 different media, one of them off-site and one of them offline. Here's how it works. 3 different places. Your computer, a mobile device like a thumb drive or an external hard drive, and then an online service. 2 different media, a thumb drive or an external drive and an online service. One of them off-site, the online service, something like Mozy or Carbonite, which are owned by the same company, or what I consider to be the gold standard of online backup, a company called Datto, located out of Norwalk. Hands down the best, not cheap, but worth every penny. And then there's this one of them offline. And this is where most of us do not do the work. If you're in Windows, built into the Windows 10 operating system is a very nice piece of software called File History. If you're on a Mac, is Time Machine. Plug in an external device connected through File History, and it will back up your data. If you are honorable and paying for your software, your Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Photoshop, you don't need to back those up. You need to back up your data, your documents, spreadsheets, photos, music, videos. That stuff that you've created, that's the stuff to back up. Most of us leave our backup attached to our computer. What that means is that if your computer has a problem, the items connected to it are going to have a problem as well. So, depending on the quantity of stuff that you're creating on a regular basis, plug in your backup once a day, once a week, once a month. It will be different for everyone. Run the backup and disconnect the device from the computer. You now have a standalone, pristine copy of that really important stuff. Because if your computer blows up sick dead, you can get your operating system back. You can get your apps back. You take that drive off the shelf, File History or Time Machine, and it will restore all that other stuff clean. Now, once upon a time in America, you could buy a musket and you didn't need a background check or a permit. You could buy snake oil and you didn't need a clinical trial or FDA approval. And you could crank up your car, chase the chickens around your front yard, and you didn't need a driver's license or insurance. In each of those cases, the rules, laws, regulations, ordinances, call them whatever you want, changed for the safety and well-being of the general public. To buy a computer today, you don't need nothing. You go online with a pre-approved credit card, and 2 days later, that little puppy is going to land at your door. Based on what we know is going on today, the question becomes, should the rules, laws, regulations, ordinances, call them whatever you want, for online social interaction change for the safety and well-being of the general public? And I would suggest you ask these people. Now, similar to Jeffrey Fowler, anything this guy writes, I read because he's got more letters after his name than in his name. What's interesting to note about this 4-year-old statement is that statement that was done last month. Now, anybody who's ever done a presentation knows that there are 3 parts. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them. So let's recap. Do your updates. It's something you can do yourself. Learn as much as you want to, and at some point, there's just information overload, as we said, but understand that everything online is traceable. Be sure that those passwords are protecting the things that you've got, and know who can get access to the stuff that you have. Free software, those 2 great places. My brother has been telling my kids for many Thanksgivings, don't do anything stupid. So watch what you click on. Have I mentioned click first, regret later? We've talked about the 3211 backup, 3 different places, 2 different media, one of them off site, one of them offline. Please use the BCC. And again, please protect your passwords. So the work that I do, I look for small business clients. I look for speaking opportunities. I think this is information that many people don't know and would be of value to know about. And for those of us who are kind of locked up and don't get to do a whole lot of anything, I have been making, where are they? There they are. These images on my smartphone and my tablet. And I look for, that's the Instagram location. I now have a website on sachiart.com/Budley, where these are available for sale. So if you know of people, I look for introductions into the art world as well. And if my memory is correct, there's nothing after these images to feast your eyes on. So it is time to stump the professor.
Okay. So we have a couple of questions. We good to go?
Great, fire away.
Okay, so of all, this thing was packed with information. Okay, this
Deliberately.
had such really tremendous things. If one wanted to do 3 things, like a top 3 of everything that you recommend, what would you recommend those top 3 to be?
Number 1, update your devices. That is without question one of the best things you can do for yourself. Number 2, make sure that your passwords are safe and well protected. And the third thing that I would do is be extremely cautious in your activity online, which is a very big umbrella covering the 2-step authentication, the information that you express online, the tracking that is done of you online.
Okay, thank you. Someone asked, what happened to Bing? So you were talking about Edge and Chrome and stuff like that. So what happened to Bing?
Bing is alive and well. I generally do not use it. And my bias came from a number of years ago in the early days of Bing, when Microsoft was trying to figure it out. And you can search this out on the web. If you went into Google as a search engine or Bing as a search engine, and you typed in suicide on Google, they were telling you how to help yourself. On Bing, they were telling you how to. And that kind of was a turnoff to me. I thought they needed some, they weren't ready for prime time. I have found I don't use Yahoo either as a search engine. There's so many or too many choices. I generally stay in Google and DuckDuckGo. Personal preference.
Okay, so someone asked on Chrome where to shut off information sharing.
myactivity.google.com. Put in your Gmail username and password and just walk through the prompts and make sure that all of the slider bars are gray. There may be another place, but that's the great granddaddy of the information gathering in Google land.
Okay. Thank you for that. Someone asked if you could put your contact information back up.
It's
There's
at the very bottom of the screen.
Oh, yes, that's right. It is. Thank you. Then someone asked, at one point you were talking about Microsoft and the government, and
Oh.
that person missed the connection between the two.
Okay. Following the papers recently, um, the Homeland Security was hacked. The Department of Defense has been hacked. The Treasury has been hacked. The software that was not hacked was Microsoft. They were clean on this one.
They've had a few problems over the years, though.
No, nobody's denying that.
Okay, so someone asked if you use or could recommend a password vault.
I don't. And the reason that I do not use password vaults is because in the event that you lose your phone or your tablet or your whatever, the person who stole it would know what that is being used for. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a very big believer in the philosophy of hiding in plain sight. And one of my clients was a fellow who was involved in project management of the NSA building. So he was a spook, and he would talk about hiding in plain sight. How do you hide in plain sight? Make a file that's called birthdays and anniversaries, shopping list, bar bat mitzvah guests, wedding guests, some innocuous benign title to a file other than this is the file where I put all the secret passwords. And if you're using a password vault, they are going to know, whomever they are. Nobody puts a password vault on their phone because it looks pretty.
Okay, thank you. So someone asks, what do you suggest when something comes up on your screen with wording like you have compromised passwords?
Closing it. Or if you're very concerned, press and hold the start button of your computer and just shut down. As a fellow I used to work with would say, if there's a telephone number in that business, in that window, call this number to solve the problem. What's happening is that you're going to get someone on the phone who's going to tell you that there is a 900-pound elephant in your living room, and he's going to overlook mentioning that he put it there. So just close out of the window. 99.9% of the time, there is nothing that happened. When something happens, you are going to know it. And by that, I mean, I've had clients who clicked and died. Basically, they clicked on something and every icon on their computer turned white. You've screwed yourself. In the you've been compromised, what's usually going on is that somebody has put some software into a web page that the server is providing to you and didn't realize has been put there. In other words, I've got a website for digital images, and I found the least expensive host for my website. The least expensive host for that website usually means that they're pretty lax in the monitoring, maintenance, and protecting of the websites that they're collecting funds for. So somebody hacks in, somebody plants whatever, somebody buys an advertisement through a less than reputable source. I want an ad that's going to pop up when you come to my website. And the pop-up is, you've been compromised. Some people just take the money for the ad. Other people say, this is not an ad that I want to allow. I'm sorry, your ad cannot, I'm not buying from you. Does that make sense?
Okay. So I guess it did to the person asking the question.
Okay.
Someone else asked, what is the good and the bad of the Equifax hack?
Oh, well, the good of the Equifax hack is that everybody figured out that there needs to be some very serious monitoring going on, which was probably not. The other good of the Equifax hack is that we learned that simple passwords are not a particularly good idea. The other good of the Equifax hack is that we probably now have people in the driver's seat who are somewhat more responsible. The bad of the Equifax hack is that the possibility of your data being online is exponentially higher. So I recommend that if Equifax or TransUnion, I'm blanking on the third one, are offering to lock your data before somebody can use it, yourself included, I recommend that you do that. For those of you interested, Apple has what they now call the titanium card. It's affiliated with Goldman Sachs. And if you go to the Apple store, I wanted to get my daughter a tablet for college. And they said, if you have an Apple credit card, we will sell you this tablet and you can pay over 12 months interest free. Well, I locked my credit. So it took me 10 or 15 minutes of how do I unlock this thing to unlock my credit report for the 5 minutes that Apple needed to check my credit, approve it, and get me a Goldman Sachs card. So in some event, that the other good thing of the Equifax hack is that it made people aware of the need to protect their personal financial information better.
Okay, thank you. So what are your thoughts on Linux?
Oh, I use Ubuntu. In fact, I do the majority of my online banking from a Ubuntu computer as opposed to a Windows computer, because whether I'm right or not, there are fewer people who are going to be hacking into Linux than hacking into Windows. And I just read an article recently extolling the virtues of Linux by, oh God, I forget, his first name is Jack and he's on Tech Republic. Jack Wallen, I think it is. And basically what he's saying is that Linux, being a open source software with more white hats than black hats, two things come into play. First of all, if there's a problem, a lot of people globally are going to jump into solving the problem. And secondly, baked into the Linux software, if you go to install something, you must put in your password as the administrator. In other words, if XYZ wants to install on your Linux machine, a pop-up window is going to say, do you want XYZ installed here? And if you didn't ask for it, you can just cancel and it won't install.
Wow, that's great. Thank you. Um, So we've come to the end of the questions that have been put on the chat. Does anybody have any questions that you would like to ask directly?
So I guess one thing that I didn't hear a lot of is delineation between free, open source, and freemium.
Well, I think at the beginning, my general statement on free is if something is free, you are the product. There is no paid Facebook. There is no paid Google right now. So in those regards, what you get is what you get. In terms of premium software, again, I could be wrong about the group that I'm talking to, but the writing letters, making spreadsheets, and doing presentations for most business professionals is a fairly common area. So the Microsoft 365 paid version is going to consistently and regularly update the software and plug holes. You can use Office 365 online as a free service. It will be advertised. Somewhere Microsoft is going to be pulling information about you. Google can be both paid and free. And I think the biggest delineation between the two, and this could be naive on my part, is if it's free, what you're doing with it is being tracked. If I read correctly a couple of years ago, using Gmail meant that you had given Google permission to read your Gmail. So if you were sending notes about Chevy Blazers for the next week, you might end up seeing advertisements for Chevy Blazers because Google figured out that you were looking for that and they could sell that information about you. So
Yep,
that I would
Google
think is
Analytics.
the biggest difference.
Google Analytics.
Bud, about Venmo. Venmo has already been hacked into, but people continue to use it. Shouldn't you be suspicious about or wary about using Venmo?
Chase Bank has been hacked. I believe Wells Fargo has been hacked. The Securities and Exchange Commission has been hacked. And if we were in public, I would dig out my keychain, hold up my Stop and Shop scan card and say, they know that I buy milk and I have saved $700 this year. It's an unfortunate aspect of where we are and what we live in. At some point in time, you do need to exercise personal preference and personal caution. I can tell you in recent past where I needed to connect with a new person on Venmo, part of the process is that you need to put in the last 4 digits of their telephone number. So there is an attempt to try and plug up the holes. Nothing is foolproof. And what I would say in the world of hacking is that if somebody's got an axe to grind with you, it really doesn't matter. They're going to do it. Years ago, one other story just to remember, Zappos was hacked and it took about 3 or 4 years to finally settle that hack. The point of it was in the early days of the hack, I was talking to groups about the fact that somebody could put a thumb drive into a computer, double click on a file, and everything inside the firewall is available. And people looked at me like I had 2 heads until a woman tried to get into Mar-a-Lago last year and was arrested for carrying in thumb drives that had malware on them. If you haven't looked up the article, I urge you to do it.
Okay, so there was another question that came up as to whether any of the three credit bureaus provide free credit monitoring.
Off the top of my head, I don't recall. There is some sort of, and you'd have to look for this online, free credit blocker. And the difference between monitoring and blocker is that in monitoring, somebody is going to say, an attempt was made to get a credit card. That's monitoring. Blocking is, I'm not letting you get to the attempt until you put in your password to get through the door. In my opinion, the blocking is as good, if not better, than the monitoring.
Mm.
Now, that said as well, it makes my family crazy, but I know every time they use the Citibank credit card, something shows up in my text. You know, they bought a loaf of bread. They went and got gasoline. I get the notification, and you can set a limit on that too. I want everything that happens with this card. I want everything over $50 that happens with this card.
Okay, thank you. Someone asked if you could repeat the blocking information.
Okay. The difference between monitoring and blocking is that a credit blocker will prevent the attempt at getting a credit card or a bank account, whereas a credit monitor will tell you what has occurred in your world of credit. A purchase was made, you got a new credit card, you opened a bank account.
Okay, thank you. So one of the habits that I get into from time to time is that when I get an email that kind of looks a little fishy, I hover over the sender, and if the email address comes up as something totally bizarre, okay, I don't open it. So I do one or two things depending on my mood at the time. Okay, sometimes I just delete it outright. And sometimes I send it to like abuse@something.com, and whatever it is that this thing is telling me to do, is phishing me about. So am I wasting my time? Does that sending over to the company, forwarding to the company, end up doing anything?
I do the send to abusefishing.com, wherever it is, my belief being that there are people at their end who are trying to help solve the problem. And if we, as the citizens, quote unquote, don't pitch in, it just makes the job more difficult. Put it differently, if you see the garbage on the street and you pick it up and throw it in the trash can, it's one less thing that the people who get paid to do have to do. No, I'm a big advocate of trying to help these people out. They are truly overwhelmed, and there are far too many people who are trying to do these things.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? I don't see anything on the chat.
Question, what was the source about blocking credit data?
I don't have one off the top of my head. You would have to go online, whether it's DuckDuckGo or Google, my choices, Bing or Yahoo, and type in free credit blocker, see what you get. And if not, credit blocker, because some service has paid to be at the top of the list.
Thank you.
Is there a difference between blocker and freeze?
Blocker and oh,
Freeze. Like
well,
if-
freezing is once you are using a credit service, somebody tries to get in 3 times with the wrong information, they can't get in for 24, 48 hours. Depending upon what's been set up, you might be notified that somebody has tried 3 times to get a credit card. And in the world of freeze, you may need to do something to unfreeze.
Okay. Okay, any more questions? Okay, that wasn't a question. That was just a conversation. So with that, okay, I want to thank you for an excellent and very useful presentation.
Yes.
I think that was fantastic. I can't wait to bring it down and view the recording again, because there was so much there, I couldn't possibly pick that all up. So my question to you is someone who rarely ever uses recording. So is my next step now to stop recording and that is it?
You can actually quit. The recording will stop. Leave the conference. The recording will stop. Either one will work.
Okay, that sounds great. And to all of you, I wish you happy holidays, a great new year, and hope that 2021 turns out to be fantastic for all of us. And the fact that the vaccine has been approved, that the 2 vaccines have been approved and is in the process of being distributed is an absolutely wonderful thing. And I have to give credit to the scientists and the engineers who have developed the basics of the vaccine and have figured out how to distribute it, because that is obviously not an easy problem. Budley, thank you so much again. Everyone else, thank you for attending a fantastic presentation and information source. So
Thank you all, and stay healthy, folks.
Thank you, Bud.
Thank you.
and you
Thank you.
too.
Happy holidays,
Thank you.
guys.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. I look
Happy
forward to
holidays,
recording.
happy holidays, everybody.
Okay.
If you have a recording, you can see. If you have a recording, you can send that even better. Yes, enjoy.
Okay. All right. So I can just end it.